Hi, and thanks for being here. I'm Sonya Dutta Choudhury, and I'm going to chat to you about careers today. Thanks, Manipal, Sikkim Manipal University, for inviting me. And thank you guys for coming in and good to see you. And great to hear from you as well with your comments and questions about careers. So, I'm going to talk a little bit first about my own career and how I do what I do, and then I'm going to go on to talking about some career hacks, some ways that you can use to kind of do a career and be successful at it and get ahead in it. And then I'm going to talk about some very successful career stories, real life stories of people who have chosen what they did and how they chose it and why they do it, and what they like about it. And through the while, I'd love to have your comments and love to have your questions, and I'm going to address questions in between as well. So to start with my own story, I grew up in a small town in Bihar called Jamshedpur. It was in Bihar at the point, but now it is in Jharkhand. And when I went to school, when I was in school, I thought I would be a journalist. So I remember going to a party, a family party, and an auntie asking me, "So, bete, what do you want to be when you grow up?" And I said, "Auntie, I want to be a journalist." And she said, "Journalist? क्या करेगी journalist बनके?" And I said, so I just waited, and then she said, पैसे तो नहीं मिलेंगे, और फिर तुझे फिर इधर घूमना पड़ेगा, लड़की हो के जर्नलिस्ट कैसे बनेगी? ठीक है, 2-3 साल कर ले, फिर तो तेरी शादी होनी है. I was like, I don't want to do that. So I thought about it, and I said, maybe what she really meant is that it's a practical career. So I said, okay, fine, I won't be a journalist. Maybe it's true, it's something that's hard to do and not practical. And so I then decided that I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I said, okay, it's open now. And open basically sounds fine, but what it means is that I had no clue. So then I went to DPS. I went to Delhi after class 10 was over. And DPS, RK Puram, was a fabulous school. And it was in those days a bit like IIT PACE, or like you have resonance classes or Akash tutorials, which meant that everybody was essentially studying for IIT or medicine. And everyone around me was like focused on careers, and we have to do well, or we let down our parents. And they were from all over the country, Meerut and Bokaro and Jamshedpur and Dhanbad and everywhere, a lot from Bihar, yes. And there was I, like, really happy. I enjoyed it a great deal. I did some writing too. I was editor of the school magazine, and I got to interview a couple. And one time we went and we went in a delegation to meet the Prime Minister, Rajiv Gandhi at the time. And this was a big thrill. So I still remember, all of us got into a bus, and there were some teachers as well, and our principal came, and we got in and drove there and got out of the Prime Minister's house. And there were this group of different groups of people came to meet him, and Rajiv Gandhi would come out, and we were in the garden, so he would go to one group, talk a little bit, and then move on to the other. And how long he spent with you was a little bit of a factor of how much you spoke with him. And then he came to our group, and everyone was in awe, and they kind of trophy flowers, and we gave him we had gone to give him signature campaign for schools. The school had done that. He's free. That was the signature campaign. So we gave him that, and he looked at it, and then he was almost about to go when I asked him something. I said, what do you feel about it? And he stopped, and he began to talk, and he spent a long time there. And that was a big, and on the way back, the principal was patted on the back. It was very high, and I was thrilled about it. At the time, I didn't really think about analyze it too much. But now looking back, I feel that was the time I realized that, okay, this is something that I can do. I can draw people out, talk to them, and have a conversation with them. So that was cool. Then by which time I had not prepared for any career. So suddenly school was over and it was time for college, and you know, the people that studied hard and the done exams off very closely to SPA or to MANSI or to IB, and I was like, oh my god, what am I going to do in my life? And I always thought I'll do literature, and you know, I was okay, fine, I will do literature and I enjoy it, but what? So anyway, I went and I literature. I spent 1 year, and you know, I spent 3 years. But the first year, primarily, I spent in a state of mild worry. Like, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do with my life? Then I said, okay. Finally, I narrowed it down to 2 options. Option 1 was like UPSC, so sit for the IAS, and option 2 was an MBA. And so I said, okay, let me do an MBA, because that seems to give you a degree that will stand you in good stead. And at the time, you know, you can work for a company, and we were reading Ayn Rand, and it felt that, okay, go into industry and you can help create GDP and do something, and economic development seemed like a thing to do. So I did that, and I got, I did all the MBA exams, and I got into IIM Calcutta, and I went to, and that's where I did my MBA and got my MBA, and then I became a banker. And that's a story in itself as well. But ANZ Grindlays Bank was like this, you know, great bank to be in. They had an amazing program. So, but you know, it was impeccable in every way, in the sense that it was a brand, it paid well, etc. There was something about banking that I didn't really, you know, enjoy that much. It also, there was a banking scandal at that time. I think that didn't help. So so then I decided that you know, I would move. And Shikha, you asked me how long I've been writing. So Shikha, that's an interesting question. I started writing, my first piece that I wrote was in school. So that was many, many years ago. And that was, the Times of India used to have those like middle sections where readers could write in and talk about, you know, some little experience. And I wrote a short piece about going back home from Delhi to Jamshedpur and how I liked it and how it was very nostalgic kind of piece. And you had to mail it, so I put it in an envelope and sent it off. And then I forgot about it. I didn't hear anything from them. And one fine day in school, it was this like hullabaloo, and just this major excitement. People like, Sonya, main 10 diya tha, so I was like, I was met in those days. So, you know, what's the matter? You've been published. And I looked at it, and sure enough, Hallowed Homecoming, and there it was. So that was a thrill. But after that, I kind of for years. And then I did my MBA, and then I worked in the bank. And then when I was 30 years old, I had like 2 small babies, and I was home. That's when I started writing again. So that's how there were years that I didn't write, and since then I find that it's something that I just enjoy doing, and I've been lucky enough to make a living out of it. So I'm doing a lot of writing now, and like, you know, I work on, and I do professionally. So Aditya, yes, the question, where I get my ideas. Sometimes it's tough. You just don't have an idea, right? But you know, from everywhere, mostly from things around me that I know. So, for example, a piece I wrote for magazine a while ago that was very popular was about how when you want to go to a US college, what kind of research that you do. So I found a lot of people were going for holidays to the US and actually go and check out campuses. So they go for a holiday, go to Berkeley, go to New York University, and it would be a kind of holiday, but we'd be talking to the admissions people, talking to the students. So I wrote this piece about, you know, these new trendy colleges where you really went to do a campus tour, and that was very popular. And then there were some things that I would, you know, there was a column in the Times of India that was called "In Search of the Perfect So it could be perfect whatever, perfect a perfect library, perfect backpack, perfect computer. And at that time I was struggling with finding a swimming pool. I had just learned to swim, and I had these little kids who I wanted to teach to swim, and there was no pool, that we were not members of any club. So I wrote a little piece about that, and that fitted into that format. So once you start writing and you look around life, you see that there's so many different things that, you could, anything that you're interested in, that you feel other people might be interested in, that's a good point to start writing. That's a good takeoff point. So I hope, Aditya, that answers your question, and would love to hear from you as well as to whether you write and what are the kind of things you're interested in, and would love for you to mail, send me a link on the page to some of your writing, because that's something that is interesting to be able to look into other people's worldviews on writing. So for all those who joined in later, a brief recap again. I'm Sonya Dutta Choudhury. I am a journalist and writer, and I'm happy to be chatting with you today. Thanks Sikkim University for inviting me. Priya, you asked me about my newest book. So it's called Career Rules, and it is going to be published by HarperCollins in March this year. It's based on the career stories that I've been writing for 6 years for Mint. And so Mint, we have a monthly column where every month we pick a particular career. So it could be digital marketing, it could be analytics, it could be food, it could be hotels, and we look at the profession and we pick up 3 different people in the profession. So there's somebody who's like really senior, who's like the CEO. Then you have a mid-level, sort of middle senior person, and then you have someone who's like just sort of joined for the last 3-4 years and still kind of doing the grunt work, and a new recruit. And we talked to 3 of these people, and we asked them that, why did you choose this? What made you pick this profession up? And do you like it? And what do you like about it? And what's the hardest part of it? What's the best part? What are the kind of skills and qualifications you need to do it well? And lastly, what's the kind of advice? And also, yes, what's your lifestyle like, right? Because that matters. So, this piece is called Get a Glimpse. And a lot of people began to really enjoy the piece, and they'd write in, why don't you feature this, and why don't you feature this profession? So the book puts together a lot of stories from people as to real life stories, from, like, say, Sanjeev Kapoor, from Manipal, and from lots of different people across different professions. And it's also got a lot of, like, career hacks. So that's Career Rules. So Srishti, how do you choose the right career for yourself? Srishti, that's a great question. And at the end of the day, I think, what you do really defines you, right? I mean, it's really the most important question. And it's the question that you walk to a room or pass anywhere, and that's the thing people ask you. So what do you do? So, that's one, it defines you. And the second is, of course, it is how you spend most of your waking hours. So how you choose it is a pretty big and important choice. So there's no one simple answer, of course, to such a complex question, but I would say that a good starting point is try everything. Try everything that you feel you may be remotely interested in. And sometimes try it even if you think you won't be interested in it. You might be surprised. So when, in turn, go work with people, try it out in terms of projects, and then you'll see that, okay, I really like the spreadsheets. I just love, figuring this data out and trying to see a pattern in it, or I love that I can, do this project and engage with people. So you'll kind of be able to figure that this is the kind of thing I like, or this is the kind of thing that is not really my scene. So that's a good way. Another way, of course, is to talk to people. So talk to people in different professions. I mean, you have an uncle who's in government, or somebody. So, you know, you're at a party and okay, this person is the collector or he's retired. Say, you know, what was your profession like, or what is it like now? Ask those questions, and people like to talk. So if you ask them, they'll tell you, and they'll say, yeah, this is what I liked. Or, you know, I really made a mistake. I wish I could have been a musician and I was just a chartered accountant, or you know, whatever. You find the most fascinating stories that come out when you actually ask the right questions. So do that, talk to people, and then read stories of people in different professions. I mean, you know, and see what they say, biographies. And there's a biography. There's the story of Phil Knight, who's Nike. So you read entrepreneur stories, Shoe Dog, and you read a section of stories and see, okay, is this the sort of world that I want to be part of? So that's a good start, and hope that helps, Shrishti. Ajay, do you like writing based on first-hand experiences or fiction? For me, it's been mostly first-hand experiences as well as reportage. So I actually go and seek out people and talk to them and ask them, okay, you know, why did you do this and why did you do that? So I don't write fiction. I think it really happened because for me writing is important, because I feel that I want to be able to be of some use to people. So what I write should help people, and fiction does, of course, but in a less obvious way, I think. And it's a way that's harder to gauge. But non-fiction is, you know, right there. So if you're doing research or something, so for example, I wrote a piece on smartphones, and so my idea was that, okay, for someone who's looking at phones in the market, here is something that's a lively, easy to read piece about, you know, these are the good phones, and this is what is good about it, and this kind of profile likes this phone. Or a piece on careers, for that matter, where people could read stories of other people and say, okay, this is what I like, or I don't like this. So I write primarily non-fiction. But having said that, it's good to move from one to the other, and you find writers, I mean, you know, switch genres very often. You have like somebody like Stephen King, who writes horror thrillers, right? And he's written this wonderful book on writing. It's completely different to a horror thriller, and he writes extraordinarily well. So people experiment, and that's fun, and you can do that. And sometimes you do that, you find, oh, I'm really good at this, or I really, you know, don't do this very well. So different styles, yes, different styles is a good idea. So for those who joined in a little late, just a quick recap. I'm Sonya Dutta Choudhury. I'm a writer, a journalist, and I started life as a banker, but moved on to being a writer. And I write now a lot on careers and talk to people in different careers. You know, I will also talk to you a little bit about. So I talked a little about my story, and now I will talk a little bit about the career hacks that you can use to get ahead in your career. And then I will end with some career success stories. So what are the career hacks that you can use to get ahead in your career? The career hack number one, the really most important one, is learn to tell your own story. Okay, so this sounds easy, right? I mean, story. In fact, it's one of the most difficult things in the world, because you know everything there is to know about you. So if you have to sum it up in, like, you know, in 1 minute or in 5 minutes, it's hard to know what to pick, where to begin, where to end. Then typically people begin chronologically and then carry on like I did. But essentially, if you can kind of front load your career, and when you're talking to somebody, you know, you're looking for a job or you're in a work situation, you pick up what is most relevant to that person, and if you can say that, then maybe go back, you know, and then basically, you know, an sense that you would want to avoid saying things like, oh, I like reading and I like traveling, because that's really bland, right? So you establish yourself as an individual in the sense that, you know, after you've gone out of the room, he'd be also remember you. Oh, yeah, it's the guy who, he was stuck in Jumri Talaiya and he was like, his battery ran out and he didn't know what to do. And he did this, right? So you want to kind of make a mark. So you have to look at your own life and pick up what you think is interesting, and that would define you as a person to an extent. Maybe the fact that you were an army kid and you moved, like you were in different places for 20 years of your life, you were in 10 different places. Maybe the fact that you hated what you studied for 2 years and then you found your way out of it, or you didn't, or the fact that you got bullied in school, or that you were a bully, whatever, right? So you pick up something and you learn to tell your story. So that's really important, learning to tell your story. That's career hack 1. And there are ways that you can kind of work on that. You can write it down, you can say it aloud, you can do the elevator pitch. And the other thing is you can also read. And you'd say, like, why would reading help you tell your story? And you'll be surprised. Because, excuse me, I'm going to have some hot water. So you'll be surprised, because when you read, you kind of are exposed to other people's career stories, and you see how they write, and you look at patterns in their life, and then you see what you find interesting. You see what you find interesting in their stories and the way they've related it, and you get an idea as to how you should tell your story as well. And there are some amazing biographies, there are some amazing autobiographies written out there, which are like just great reading. And of course, the side benefit is you learn how to read, you learn how to sort of write and communicate better too. I mean, one classic favorite of mine is Andre Agassi's Open, where he writes his own story in such an amazing way that you are it's like a thriller. And people's lives are interesting, if you tell them well, people's lives are fascinating. So that's one thing, that's career hack 1. Learn to tell your story, and say it and say it again and say it aloud to somebody, and get it right and make it compelling. That's career hack 1. Career hack 2 is intern. Interning exposes you to different things, so intern as much as you can. And you may not realize it at that point when you're interning. You might think, what am I doing? But it's whichever sort of internship you do, it's bound to teach you a great deal. I mean, I remember when I was in my MBA and I was doing an internship, and so this was in a company called Timken, and this was finance, so we had to do a profitability study. And on tapered rollered bearings, which was like a widget kind of a product I'd kind of never heard of, right? So I did the profitability study. It was like plugging numbers into Excel, and I did that into Lotus Notes, and it worked out well, and everyone was very sweet and nice about it, and I kind of felt, did I do something, worthy enough? And I remember being full of doubt and feeling that no, I really didn't achieve a lot. But now when I look back on it, I think I learned a lot. I learned how to use the software. I learned how to communicate with people. I learned how to, I figured that corporate finance is something I don't want to do. So interning is a great idea, and that's something you should definitely focus on. Intern in different kinds of organizations and see how you like them. Intern at a startup, intern at a multinational, see the differences in culture. It's like, and it's like kind of dipping your toe into different things, and you don't have to commit, right? So you open this door and you kind of peek in, and you like it, and so you decide, okay, I'll go back there, or you don't like it and you're like, okay, fine, I don't need to go back there. But it's something that you can't do with a full-time job. I mean, if you sign on at a company, you can't really after 2-3 months say, oh, I don't like that. Should I just go and check out the multinational next door? So it's something you can only do when you're at a particular age, and once that age is over, that's it. So intern, that's career hack number 2. Siley is saying, can you tell us some more of what you've written for the Times of India and for Hindu? So Siley, the Hindu was one of the first papers I wrote for, and that's because I liked reading them, and they had this wonderful literary review section. It was like a supplement that came out once a month. And I remember that at the time I had really small children, and I would be reading out stories to them. And I noticed that these fairy tales were like so violent, they were like killing people, giants, beheading people, killing wives. I was like, what is it about it? And I mean, these are stories for small children, right? So why are they so gruesome? And I started reading about it, and I went to the library, and I was like, my parents were posted in New York, and I was in New York for a couple of months. So I went to the New York Public Library, and I found that there's this book by Bruno Bettelheim about the uses of enchantment. I started to read the book, and I mean, it was just fascinating the way he analyzed how it's important for children to deal with violence and why. And therefore, you have these violent stories that have come down from the years for a certain reason. So then I wanted to write about it. And at the time, I was writing only for, I think, Bombay Times and Times of India. And they didn't really carry this sort of feature. So I remember writing to the Hindu Literary Review editor and saying, I have this piece and I want to write it. And what do you think about it? And she replied like, yeah, fine, go ahead. So I sent them the uses of, the enticement of the esoteric or something I called it. I don't know why, because that's not violent, but nevertheless, so that was my first piece in the Hindu. And then once I'd start, with the first piece, then you have to get into a relationship with an editor if they like your piece, if it gets good feedback. So then they're more open to more pitches from you. So then I'd pitch them more, and I liked the publication. So that was Hindu. With Times of India, again, I would look for areas in which I could write. So I couldn't do hard news, right? Because I wasn't working full time. So I had to look at the softer features and look at, what's something that I can do well. And in those days, Bombay Times used to have, they used to cover artists and exhibitions. And this was something I liked. Like, I'd love to go and see the exhibition and talk to the artist as well. So I started to do that, and I did a lot of those, and I remember interviewing M.F. Hussain at that point, because all these guys would come to Jahangir Art Gallery where they'd have their exhibitions, and the artist would be sitting there. So you'd walk in, you'd see the paintings, and you'd chat to him and talk to him, and then I'd write up that piece. And it was fun, it was nice, and I got paid for it, so it was great. So that's the Times of India. So I wrote, that was how I started to write for them, and that's how. So is there any special incident or memory from your journalistic career? That's a hard one. There are so many, and it happens every day, right? You go to meet a big name person, and it's like, there's nothing memorable, all right? Or sometimes you go to meet somebody who's very ordinary, and you find they have the most wonderful story. So quirky things happen all the time, and there have been some interviews I've been like really excited about. I mean, the celebrity ones, right? And one time I got to interview Amitabh Bachchan, and that was for the Deccan Herald, and KBC 2 was going on, so I went and I was at his, at the sets, and had a conversation with him, and then I came back like really disappointed, and everyone, all my friends and family said, what happened? And I said, it was so bland, and it was a good interview. I mean, Mr. Bachchan said everything nice. He said, oh, I had a great team, and I'm looking forward to working with this, and this is fabulous, the show, etc. But I felt like there was no story really, right? And I remember people ribbing me and saying, what did you expect? Like, what did you think you'd go and sort of come back with an expose? And so that sort of thing happens. And I've been, and I remember in recent memory, one of the people that struck me the most was a young college boy who was a hacker, and he's now a cybersecurity expert. So I went and I talked to him about it, and I had just talked to 2 or 3 different people who claimed that they were like really good hackers and whatever, but they were not. And then I meet this college boy, and he had the most amazing story. Like, Shashank, I hope you're online. Thank you very much for sharing your story. And so yes, and then what happens is the fabulous part about it is you meet, you spend a couple of hours, you talk a lot, and then there's that connection, and then you always kind of feel you know that person really well, and then there's that kind of bond that carries on. So that's what I love about my job. So Isha, you say, is it easy to switch careers after working in one industry? It's not easy. I mean, but it's not difficult either. It all depends on if you want to do it and how much you want to do it. And but I mean, I've seen, so I've while I've reported on careers, I've also talked to a lot of people who've switched careers, and I've seen that people are happy after having switched careers. So if you do want to switch careers, there's certain things you should do. For example, I mean, obviously you shouldn't burn your boats, and you shouldn't just say, okay, fine, I don't like this job, I'm chucking it. I mean, you can do that. There are people who do that and make a success of it as well, right? But generally speaking, if you are practical and you have a family that's dependent on you, and you need the money, then it's something that you could plan. But definitely, yes. I mean, today switching careers can be a huge advantage, because as you see it, things are not vertical silos anymore. Like, data analysts, employers want a mathematical engineering person who knows psychology, who may have worked in marketing. So an engineer who's been in marketing as well, or a finance man who's moved to consulting or into food, for instance, you have it's a big advantage. So in a way, you have a whole lot of extra learning to do, right? Because you have to retrain yourself. But that's an advantage rather than a disadvantage, because you kind of invested more in yourself, you added some layers, and in whatever way, what you've done before never goes waste. You never know which day, in what way it kicks in. I mean, the most famous example of this is Steve Jobs, right? He went to calligraphy class when he was in college, and calligraphy class, how's it going to help you? But he liked it, and he went and he did it, and he spent time, and he stopped doing college, but he did calligraphy. And that's really that skill with design and calligraphy and the whole iPod design came with that. So yes, if you want to switch and you feel you want to switch, spend time and thought on it, research it, talk to people who've done it, read about it, get into maybe doing it once a week, do a part-time job, work with somebody voluntarily, and sort of see how you like it. And then if you think that you do, yes, it's great, and you may decide to switch back again, so it's definitely something you can do. So to recap, for all of those who are joining in late, hi and thanks for joining. I'm Sonya Dutta Choudhury. I'm a journalist, and I'm here to talk about careers and career hacks and successful career stories. And so I talked about career hack 1 and career hack 2. And career hack 1 is to learn how to tell your story, and career hack 2 is to go and intern. Career hack 3 is to go find a mentor. So, I mean, you see this all the time, right? People are writing this all the time. Go find a mentor. But in many ways, it's easier said than done. Like, how do you just go get yourself a mentor? Do you just walk up to somebody and say, will you be my mentor? It's a bit cheesy, right? And it's also a little awkward. How do you do it? But having said that, it can work amazingly. I mean, I remember when I was in a young management trainee in Grindlays Bank, and we had Naina Lal Kidwai as our super boss, our boss's boss, and we'd look at her and she was very nice and approachable, but obviously we didn't ever go, it didn't cross my mind to go to her and say, ma'am, would you be my mentor? I couldn't do that, right? And so I didn't, but years later, I met her, and this time it was as a journalist. And I talked to her, and she talked about how it was hard for her to do certain things, and as a woman it had been hard, and how she talked to herself and say, okay, early days in a meeting, she'd say that, I will talk in this meeting, I'll make a comment. And initially it was hard. And then she said, I did it the first time and the second time, and it became easier. And so I just decided I'll do that. And she said women just, sometimes can hold back, and they don't ask enough. They don't come and actually ask, ma'am, what about my grade? They will not ask you. And it was a great conversation, and I went back and I thought to myself, I wish I had this conversation like 20 years earlier. I think it would have like really helped me in many ways. So just don't hesitate. Go up. I mean, you don't have to be cheesy about it, or you don't have to do it in an obvious or uncomfortable way. But people like to be asked. People like enthusiastic youngsters, people who are older and more senior. If somebody is enthusiastic and they come up to them and say, can I like spend 15 minutes with you? They're happy to talk, they're happy to help. And you might think, I mean, at that time I remember saying that, okay, we are these like junior guys, what possible interest can we be to these like senior guys, right? But today, I talk to people and for a senior person, it helps to be able to talk to a youngster as well, because they get a feel of what a young person is all about. So there's this whole like millennial thing, and everyone wants to know what a millennial is and what millennials do and what drives them. So as a young career person, if you talk to somebody and you talk to them frankly as well, and talk to them about your concerns, it's something that works well both ways. Both people are getting something out of the transaction. So yes, a mentor is a great idea, and don't be hesitant. Look around and look at people who you think could be possible mentors, and approach them in whatever way you feel comfortable. So that's career hack number 3. So career hack number 1 is to learn how to tell your story. Career hack number 2 is to intern. Career hack 3 is, of course, as we talked about, go get a mentor. Career hack number 4, dip into the liberal arts. So what do you mean by that? That means is go read a storybook. How would a storybook help? You'll be surprised. So you read fiction. I mean, you read non-fiction and it tells you about the world. So clearly that helps, right? So put that aside. But fiction, I mean, a murder mystery, how does it help? It helps in many ways. Firstly, you're reading fiction, you're introduced to a world of characters. There's a lot of drama. The kind of things that power characters in good novels are the kind of things you see in life. Greed, ambition, fear, sibling rivalry, things you see in a corporate office or outside of it. So you look at those, you look at how people negotiate those things, you look at types of people, and you learn. And you're looking at it, and then you're saying, okay, this is how, if a man against an environment, a man against a team, somebody who's being bullied, somebody who's not, how do you take things on? And then you learn as well, I mean, a whole set of other things, right? It's written in a certain language that is interesting, so you learn how to communicate, you have a good turn of phrase. I mean, today, more and more, all of research says that the ability to communicate is what is going to help you get ahead, right? That's going to help you. That's going to be prized. That's what a machine can't do, and that's what a human being can do. So that, reading, getting into the liberal arts, whether it's sociology or history, you look at patterns in history, characters, how they negotiate things, because the themes really, at the end of the day, the themes are all the same to a great extent. So you dip into the liberal arts. So that's something that you should do. Go read a book, read The Hunger Games. Don't watch the movie. I mean, you can do that after you read the book. Read the book. If you like that, and if you want to be adventurous, go read a Russian novelist. Or if you don't want to start with like Crime and Punishment, read Chekhov, read short stories. So dip into the liberal arts. Shikha says that she's a journalism student and excels. So Shikha, it's a fascinating profession, journalism, and there are lots of things you can do. Excel. Read a lot, find out more interesting websites and channels, find out news reporters who you find you like, follow them, read. see what's happening around you, and then maybe, you know, start writing on things around you that bother you. So it could be a neighborhood thing that you write about, or it could be something global as well. That's really what you can do. And there are a lot of resources online. So just like, it's like a treasure house, right? So just go online, see there are journalism courses, there are journalism networks. There's a lot you can do and see what other journalists are writing. So that's a good way to, and read a whole set of newspapers and websites. Ravika, what message would you like to give to all the women out there who work hard to get a degree and want to reach the heights? So Ravika, I think it's a very interesting time to be a woman, and you know, there are doors open today that have not been open for ages. I mean, of course, everything has its challenges, right? There are challenges, but there are so many opportunities. And so there's a huge consciousness as well of the fact that, you know, it's important that women working helps society as a whole, and that children belong to both men and women. So the laws, if you look in so many countries, recently India put laws right for maternity leave. So the laws are changing, people's values are changing. That's a good place to be in. So this is a time to build skills, because that's something that, you know, previously sometimes women have shied away from, because, oh, I won't be allowed to work, or there's no point me investing so many years in it, because then I'll have to quit. So building skills is like really building skills, talking to people and staying in touch with them. And there's you know, there's no limit to the sort of things you can work in. It's a good time, and there are lots of opportunities. And Ravika, I wish you good luck. So to you know, to recap for all those who've joined in again, hi again, and I'm Sonya Dutta Choudhury, and thanks for joining me. So in the first part, we spoke about my story and how I, you know, moved from being a banker to a journalist. And then we talked about different career hacks. What are the ways and means, you know, what are the hacks that you can use to choose your career well and to do well. And now I'm going to talk about some inspiring career stories. So in the course of the column that I write for Mint, which is called Get a Glimpse, which is looks at different professions and talks to different people in it, I've met, like, I must have met over the past 6 years about 100 people, and all of them have, you know, great stories in some way or the other. And it's amazing to see, you know, the themes in them, how they move from one career to the other, or sometimes they stay in the same career. And I've put some of those stories down, and but some of them, one that I'd like to talk about today is that of a young man who grew up in a mining town in Rajasthan. And his father worked in the Darima mines, and his father worked in the mines. He worked as management in the Darima mines. And so this boy used to go to school there, and then in class 12, 11 and 12, the physics teacher left. So no new physics teacher came. So they had no physics teacher, but he had heard from his cousin that IIT was a good place. And so he wanted to go into IIT. So he studied on his own and did well, and he got into IIT. And this is Pranay Chile, who is the founder of Quicker.com. He had a good consulting job and all well, and very nice, and he was consulting well. But he always wanted to be a filmmaker. He always wanted to make films. So what did he do? He thought about it, and then after, like, you know, 2 or 3 years of working, he said, okay, I will just make a film. Let me see. He had saved up some money, and so he took that money and he took time off. And he said, okay, so no film family, right? He's not from a film fraternity, nothing. So he had to put together this unit, a cameraman, editor, etc., and shoot the film. He wrote the script for it. It was like a science fiction film set ahead, and it was like, you know, futuristic in a way that it was a film that you could decide as a viewer. It was interactive, so you could decide which way the story went. But he needed a crew. and he was in New York. He found this online listings ad called site called Craigslist. So on Craigslist, he put up, want an editor, want a sound person, want this, these kind of an actor, etc., etc. And he got together an entire crew through advertising on Craigslist. The crew came together. The film was shot, made. It came out very slick, very nice, later, put together very well. But he didn't have any money for marketing. He didn't have a big studio to back. So that kind of never really took off. So that was that. But Pranay Chille realized, oh my God, there is this online site, and look at this, the power of this. I have created an entire film and set up a unit through this. He came back to India and he started an online listing site. And that's quicker.com. And today it is a unicorn, and it's funded, and it's valued at, over $1 billion. So you look at the story and you think, yes, you may want to do something and it may not be connected, and yet it may have, an amazing spin-off into what you do. If he hadn't made the film, he would have never got the idea for Quicker, and he would have been, working in consulting, which is a good thing, but it's different to, being an entrepreneur and creating quicker.com. So that's one. And another story of, a young engineering student who was in Triple IT Gwalior. So not a metropolitan city, small city. They're in the college, not like great opportunities in that sense that you have in a larger city. But one day through the college portal, there was a competition. And this was like a global competition, UNICEF, for making coding a game, creating an online game. So Arpita Kapoor, who's this young lady, decided that, okay, let me just try it. Let's see what will happen. So she and a colleague of hers, a friend, a batchmate of hers, they sat together and they designed a game, and they sent it and forgot all about it. And one fine day, she gets a mail that you have been selected and you are the winner. And as a prize, you get to attend the Game Developers Conference in San Francisco. So off she went, and this was, I think, in 2011. She went off from India to SF. And she said, my God, that one trip changed my life. I just decided that I looked at the things around me and I said, gosh, this is the level of things people are doing in gaming, and I want to go back and I want to create this kind of gaming thing. It's possible. I can work with this sort of light and sound and these sort of designers. I will go back and I will do this. And she came back and she created a gaming company, and today she has MECMUDA, I beg your pardon. They were identified by an accelerator, by the IMA accelerator, and they were in Ahmedabad. Now she's moved to Bangalore and she's doing very well. So here again was an inspiring story of somebody who just, looked around and looked at the different things that they could do and picked up on that and where it took them. So Priya says, who do you draw inspiration from and where and why? So many places, Priya. I mean, and so many people. Mostly people, really, actually. You talk to people and I mean, I remember asking this question. I was doing a series on medicine as a career, and I went to Dr. Badve, who is head of the Tata Memorial Hospital in Mumbai. And I asked him, doctor, where do you draw your strength and your inspiration from? And he said to me, from my patients. And he told me a wonderful story. He said, one day I had this couple sitting in front of me, husband and wife, and the wife had cancer, and she was going to need chemotherapy. And she sat in front of me and she said, doctor, I'll have chemo and I'll lose all my hair, and then my husband won't look at me. And her husband looked at her, and he opened his wallet, and he took out a picture and he showed her the picture. And it was the picture of their wedding day. And then he said, see, when I married you, I had hair. Now I'm bald. You still love me, don't you? And she said, and the wife started immediately smiling, and I know that thing went away. And he said, just people and the way they interact and the courage that they have and the way they negotiate, so inspiring. So yes, people are amazing source of inspiration. Ravi is asking, is digital marketing picking up as a career? Totally. I mean, if you look at job sites, Ravi, you'll see that a lot of the jobs are just looking for digital marketers. And, you know, marketing today, even the marketing today is no longer just marketing. Marketing has become digital marketing. It's, you know, previously digital marketing was, there would be one digital marketing person in the organization who looked after it. Today it's become something that got to the US, digital marketing. And it is a skill that a whole section of people doesn't have because it's such a new territory. So for young people who are looking at, you know, what is new and what is happening, digital marketing is a great career. It's highly in demand, and you know, everybody. It's like an entirely virgin territory and a new field where expertise is needed and sought after. So definitely yes. So to recap for all those who joined in, thanks for coming in, and I'm Sonya Dutta Choudhury, and I'm a journalist, and I'm going to be talking about, I've been talking for a while on careers and career hacks and career stories, and so I'm going to you know, end by telling you one last story of somebody who I met recently who really inspired me, and he was so many years younger than me. The young person I talked about earlier. So this was a young man who grew up in Bihar, and he was in a school, in an army school, and but he found he always, when he was in 8th standard, a friend of his came to him and said, you know, I can't get into my Orkut account. I've been locked out. Somebody had hacked his Orkut account. So this young man, Shashank, said, okay, let me help you. And it was like a puzzle to him. Shashank enjoyed reading a lot, and he'd read science fiction and mysteries, and he, you know, this became like solving a mystery. So he went into it and found out, yes, there was some friend of a friend who was an IITian who knew programming, who would actually come and hack this account. And then he got into hacking, and he was like fascinated by hacking. So then he started getting into it, and he found online an Indian hackers army, and he became part of it. And the Indian hackers army used to do things like hack Pakistani websites and say that, you know, you've done a wrong thing. If Pakistan launched an attack on India, like a terrorist attack in Mumbai, this is wrong, you shouldn't have done this, etc., etc. And Shashank, he says today that at that time we felt we're really doing something good for our country. But in retrospect, he said, I found we just, you know, spent all our time on the computer, and I didn't bother studying at all. And I sort of, his studies fell back. His parents wanted him to do, guess what? Engineering. And everybody, all their friends, etc., were doing engineering. The friends' sons were doing engineering. So they said, no, that's it. This is no good. You study for your engineering entrance exam, which he started doing. But he found after a while, you know, it's just so much cramming, and he found it wasn't interesting. And suddenly at that time, he discovered these bug bounty programs, which is essentially websites like Facebook, Bitcoin, or Google, offering hackers that come and hack us, see the vulnerabilities in our system, and if you can do that and point out what the bugs are, we will pay you for each bug. So we'll pay you like $100 or $500 or $1,000 depending on what the bug is. So Shashank got onto these programs, and he was good at finding bugs. I found them, and he began to get paid like $100, $700, and it was amazing. He was earning money from something he liked to do. But you know, in those days, it wasn't a career. You still had to, you know, you had to get into a college and do a degree. So eventually his parents said, no, like, you can't just do this and give your laptop, shut your laptop and give it away, and now you study. So he had to do that, and he was quite miserable, but he was sent off to Kolkata, Rajasthan, and spent like, you know, miserable kind of couple of years there, but he studied and he got into engineering, he got into IT, and then he said, he went to his parents and said, now, the day he got in, he went and said, I want my laptop back. He got his laptop back and he was back in business. And he did really well, and he was approached by a foreign exchange company. Will you do our cybersecurity for us? And today he's in college and he's working as well. And it was a marvelous story. And I looked at it, and you know, there's so often a conflict between what you want to do and what the world wants, what your parents want. And somehow Shashank managed to balance all. And he kept his parents happy. He got into engineering, but he also did what he wanted. And that was a wonderful story for me. Does writing energize or exhaust you? When the piece is done and it's reading well, then I'm like really energized. Oh my God, this is good. All right. But there are times when I'm like, sitting, trying to start a beginning, and I'm looking at the computer and one sentence and then another, and I'm just not able to start. And that time it's not exhausting, but it's kind of frustrating. And then I get up and I go and I come back and I get up and I go and I procrastinate and I read something else, 7 ways to advance your career, or like, why the tabloids are blaming Angelina instead of Brad Pitt. And then I say, okay, no, back to work. And eventually I do write, and I'm happy for it. So it's a bit of both, I guess, Aditya. It's a bit of both. So yeah, that's so thanks to recap, Sonya Dutta Choudhury now, and I'm signing off, and I've we had a great chat, talked about careers, talked about career hacks, talked about writing and different kinds of writing. And thank you, Sikkim Manipal University, for inviting me. And guys, would be great if you join in at the job fair in Mumbai on Sunday, on the 8th of Jan. There's a job fair. So it's a good forum to look at different options. So do that, and hope you have enjoyed this, and do like my page if you do, so that you can get regular updates. Sonya Dutta Choudhury, the Facebook page, and I'm Sonya DC, as in Washington DC, Sonya DC, on Twitter. So thanks again. Thanks for joining in, and would love to keep hearing from you on any queries or any other. Would love to hear your career stories as well, on either on Sonya DC or on